Welcome back, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you, although I must admit it's a little bittersweet. I'm very happy to be facilitating our final program this week, but I must admit it also comes with quite a bit of sadness, as I'm aware that this is our last week together for our lunch program. We have had an incredible opportunity over the last 8 sessions to learn about the history of Indigenous and First Nations people from the perspective of Indigenous and First Nations people, rather than the perspective of the people who have written our history books. This has provided an incredible insight to the experiences and also the cultural loss that has been experienced, as well as the trauma and hardships that this group of high-risk individuals have been through over the last several decades and several generations. Moving forward, we recognized the need to be more aware and to be more supportive of this culture and to help bring it back and to make it okay, I guess you might say, to be talking about and to be engaged with. We want to remove that stigma. We want to remove that discrimination, and we need to make up for the harm that's been done as best we can. And one of the best ways that we talked about doing that was to explore and learn and develop an appreciation for the First Nations culture and Indigenous peoples' culture. We began looking through those 7 grandfather teachings and recognizing that a lot of them had messages for us and how we could carry ourselves, how we could better interact with others, be more mindful, and be more self-aware. They've provided us interesting stories and stimulating discussions where we've been able to become increasingly aware of the way that we are and the way that we can adapt ourselves to be more inclusive, to be more nurturing of our relationships, to be more aware of how we can be a part of solutions instead of part of problems. To wrap up this session today, we want to explore the final one of the grandfather teachings, which is truth. And after we explore that truth, we need to move into pairing that with reconciliation. How can we take that and the other lessons that we've learned over the last several weeks and translate those into a continued conversation once this program is done? And so this is where, once I'm done my presentation piece, I'm going to be looking to the participants here in the room today to share with us what reconciliation means to you, what the continued conversation after today means to you. So let's get started with a look at truth. Truth is having knowledge of our cultural teachings. It's having knowledge of ourselves. It's having awareness of other people. It's having an objective lens. And there's a lot that we can learn when we take a truthful and honest perspective. So before we dive in too deeply, let's take a moment just to center ourselves with a brief, mindful territory acknowledgement. We want to begin this lesson, as we have all of our others, by acknowledging that our land here that we live on and that we work on is the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Canada. We recognize and very deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place where we now live and we work. As guests on this land, we want to thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We also recognize the contributions of the Métis, Inuit, Mi'kmaq, and other Indigenous peoples to the richness of our community, our provinces, and our country as a whole. We aspire to continue strengthening ties with the communities that we serve and that we work in, and we want to build a future together through learning and through reconciliation. And so with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about truth today. As always, we have a lovely video from Elder Hazel, who's going to be sharing with us a little bit about what the teaching of truth means to her people. I'm going to quickly refresh the screen share just to make sure that our audio is active, and I hope you enjoy her stories.
This teaching is about truth. The symbol for truth is the turtle. Truth is understanding the importance of all the sacred 7 teachings. It is said that in the beginning, when the Creator gave the 7 teachings, Grandmother Turtle was present to make sure that the laws would never be lost or forgotten. The turtle also teaches us patience. It is one of the slowest moving creatures on earth, and yet it makes its way there and to their destination no matter how long it takes. Grandmother Turtle carries the teachings on her back. On her back, there are 13 markings and inner markings and 28 outer markings. These are called scoots. This represents an old calendar of the days when we followed the moon as our guide. During this time, we had 13 months, and each month had 28 days. This represented one cycle of the earth around the sun, and the number of days, 28, with the cycle of the moon. The turtle reminds us of the cycles of the moon, the sun, and all of creation. The people did not call them months, they were called moons. Truth is understanding the importance of all the sacred 7 teachings and practicing the teachings as a way of life. Be true to yourself and honor your gifts. It is easy to be honest when there are no consequences to telling the truth. However, it is not easy to tell the truth when you think that your words or actions will get you in trouble. Living in truth is living in harmony with yourself. Be truthful to everyone. Don't spread any rumors and lies. Truth, understand it, speak it, live by it. Sometimes when we are young, we think if we cross our fingers behind our backs when telling a lie, it's okay. It is not okay. Live your truth and be a role model to others. To know all of these things is to know truth. Always seek the truth. Living in the truth is living the 7 teachings.
Elder Hazel brings up some very interesting points about truth. The fact that truth is the knowledge of all of these other skills and the ability to see their true value and not only be aware of them, but practice them as well. Truth is recognizing, what do you have for skills relating to bravery? How can you be respectful to one another? How can you improve these things? How can you better yourself? How can you aim every day to be loving, to be humble, to be wise? I think truth also speaks to knowing ourselves, knowing that we have these values and that our actions may or may not line up with those values. To ensure that they do, we really need to have a mindful practice every day. We need to be self-aware about things like our word choices and our tones. We need to be mindful of things like our biases and the impacts that our own learned experiences and our own cultures may have. We need to try to get those blinders down so that we can see things beyond our own individual perspective. And all of that can be very challenging. But I think that truth speaks to a widening lens. I love the stories from Hazel about the many lessons that we can learn from the turtle. One of them being patience. I think it takes patience to be able to adopt these practices and to be able to try and strengthen these skills. By speaking about humility, wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, and truth over the last several weeks, we have learned skills. We've talked about them. We've developed things. But again, they don't stop here. These are skills that we continue to develop, that we can continue to strengthen if we're mindful, if we're aware, and if we're practicing these values and teachings instead of just knowing them. I think it takes patience because oftentimes when we learn something, we want to be the best that we can be. We want to master that skill. You know, I like this idea of bravery. I want to be the bravest there is. But the truth is, I have moments that I'm brave and maybe I have moments that I'm not. I have ideals and values about integrity and bravery and strength. And maybe I need to be honest and truthful with myself about where my strengths are and where my weaknesses are so that I can better myself and have myself in line with those values, in line with those ideals. The turtle is considered to be exceptionally wise, having been here since the time of creation itself. Even the markings on the back of the turtle reflect the nature around us. The old calendar that was used by many Indigenous or First Nations people with 13 months and 28 days per month, reflecting those markings on the back of the shell. It reminds us that living things and people have been here since the beginning of time, not necessarily in the forms that we know today, but life has been here for a very, very long time. And these lessons are not necessarily new. We can look around in nature and we can see bravery, we can see love, we can see humility, we can see honesty. These teachings have come to us from a number of animals and creatures, and we can look around to nature to see them happening and to inspire us to continue adopting them. As I mentioned, it's believed that the turtle has been here during the creation of the earth and since that time. So although he is very slow and although he may be very, taking his time, it doesn't mean that he does not appreciate his journey. He is reliable. When we think about that good old saying about the tortoise and the hare, it's the turtle that makes it to the finish line. He's reliable. He is paced. He knows his direction. He's committed to the journey he's making. He has the patience to endure that journey and see it through to completion. He has the wisdom. The turtle is adaptable to environment. We see that it has been here for a very, very long time with very minimal change. And so it represents the fact that it's capable and it's strong. And again, it can house a lot of these different ideals. He represents the basic truths and the laws of nature, as well as time in the plates of the shell, as I mentioned before. The 7 grandfather teachings are meant to be shared, taught, and demonstrated. Let's remember that this conversation can't stop today. So as much as we have been sharing and teaching and demonstrating and working to understand over the last several weeks, to truly be a part of the reconciliation process in Canada, we need to continue sharing, teaching, and demonstrating an appreciation for this culture. And we need to continue trying to adopt in as many of these skills as we can. If we can live a truthful and honest life, we can live in a life by the grandfather teachings. We can take on knowledge of ourselves and other cultures. We can take on an appreciation for their beliefs and their values. And instead of putting up barriers and creating polarized groups of us and them, we can instead create a beautiful, diverse amalgamation of people with strong relationships and an appreciation for one another, an ability to see each other honestly and truthfully, and again, appreciate all of the differences and all the similarities that we might have. To know the knowledge and truth and appreciate the wisdom, the nurse of light knows love and peace. To know you as a precious part of creation, to respect and acknowledge your worth, in the face of crisis, in the face of adversity, to see the bravery in facing the enemy of health, and embrace the honesty and truth. We are brothers and sisters to embrace our Mother Earth. This slide here is a beautiful little excerpt, speaking again to the meaning of these teachings and the importance of truth and knowledge. We see words all throughout this phrase, reflecting the 7 grandfather teachings, wisdom and love, just to name a couple. Walking away from this program, I think one of the best things that we can do is really stop to think before we speak, before we act, before we communicate, before we judge. Is what we're thinking really true? Is it objective? Is it an opinion? Is it a fact? Is it helpful and positive? Is it constructive? Or is it critical and negative and judgmental? Is it inspiring or empowering? Or is it belittling and putting someone down? Is it necessary and important? Or is it just my opinion that may not be very relevant? Is it kind? Whether something is constructive and critical, or whether we are agreeing with people, we can always be mindful of being kind. This little acronym reminds me of trauma-informed care in a lot of different ways. The basic principles around trauma-informed care recognize that there is a very high likelihood of engaging with people who have experienced trauma. It recognizes that a traumatic experience can really change the way we see the world. It can make different stimuli very triggering for some of us. For other people, it can make emotions and situations difficult to navigate. For many, it may impact the quality of their relationships, their self-esteem, or their mental health, just to name a few potential impacts. Trauma is all around us, and one person's road to recovery is different than another. However, the common underlying principle is that we need to be mindful of how we carry ourselves when working with a person who's been through trauma. We want them to feel safe and recognize that we are a person and we are promoting an environment that is trustworthy and has their best interest at heart. We're here as a support agent, a collaborator, somebody to empower other people to take action and be successful. We're here to help people, to build them up, not to judge and not to take them down. I often think of trauma-informed care as involving a little extra kindness, a little extra mindfulness, a little extra awareness, because we want people to feel those things, and someone who has been through a lot of adversity may not feel those things very easily. When I look with a very truthful and honest lens at the history of Canada and the way that we've treated Indigenous and First Nations people, I recognize the very sad reality that many of them have experienced trauma. Many of them have experienced a disconnect from their culture, from their families, and from a lot of resources and supports that they have had a right to have. Where we are now is a place of needing to build bridges, to make amends, to try to repair as much as we can of the damage that's been done. And a big part of that takes honesty, and it also takes support. We can't support people if we don't genuinely care. Walking away from our series, I would like to turn it over to our participants today. I want to turn it over to you guys. And I want to know a little bit about what you are going to be doing moving forward. For me, I'll give you a couple of examples to get you started. I've recognized that there are opportunities out there that I have not taken to learn more about Indigenous culture and Indigenous people. I intend to get more involved. I recently connected with the Mi'kmaq Council and then kind of chatting with them and trying to explore some volunteer opportunities and placement opportunities that might be out there. I've also recently reconnected with a former student of mine who is from a First Nations community. They took me to a ceremonial sweat once, and it was my first time experiencing that. And again, I connected with them hoping that maybe there will be other opportunities for me to learn more about this culture. The other thing that I want to do is be more mindful of incorporating this into what I teach. Being a child and youth care instructor for Eastern College, we talk a lot about different sociological issues, including high-risk groups, people who are marginalized, how to help them. And I'm becoming increasingly aware that this group is not only high risk, but they are very much in need of our allyship. And there needs to be more discussion, there needs to be more content, there needs to be more support in the education we provide professionals in our field. I recognize my role in that, and I'm going to strive to incorporate more of that into my classroom to make sure they're prepared to be supported and be a part of the reconciliation process. Those are what I want to do. Those are some of my action items. I want to turn it over to you guys, though. I would love to see some hands up. I'd love to hear from some of you, because this whole last portion is about hearing your thoughts. You know, what were your big takeaways from this program? What are you going to do to keep this conversation alive? What has made the biggest impact on you from these last several weeks of this program? I want to hear your thoughts on reconciliation now, and what it means for you moving ahead. So I'm going to keep an eye out for hands. I've got my fingers crossed that maybe we might have a couple of people who are willing to share their thoughts or willing to share their ideas. And if you're more comfortable using the chat, you are more than welcome to type in a response as well. So you certainly can do that if you would rather type than chat. Now, Natasha, I see your hand up. Would you like to share some of your thoughts?
I just want to be thankful that we had a chance to learn this course and had a chance to learn about more cultures that we're not necessarily involved in, but can share an understanding and know what it's about, and kind of open the conversation and let it be known, because whatever we're learning, we're going to share it with other people, and other people are going to be more educated, are going to be educated just by the little 2 cents that we've learned from here. And just like every animal, have our respect, being respectful, being honest, and every knowledge that we've learned is gonna stay with us, and it's gonna help us with our daily lives, and we're gonna share it, and we're gonna help other people, learn about Indigenous culture and let them know to be more respectful about it. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you've enjoyed this. I love opportunities to see and learn about new cultures, and I encourage you to take that opportunity, whether it's learning more about First Nations and Indigenous culture or learning more about other cultures. The best thing that you can do to remove your biases and to make sure that you don't have any prejudices or anything like this in place, or that you're actively mitigating them, is to go out there and learn. Try to open your mind and try to experience them. Go to a cultural market, interact with people, volunteer with the Multicultural Association, watch videos and YouTubes and documentaries on the internet. Find good sources to expose yourself to new cultures. And the other thing that I can't say thank you enough for highlighting is that trickle down effect. A lot of people think, well, what can I do? I'm one person. I'm a student, or I'm a parent, or I'm this, or I'm that. I can't change the landscape in Canada. But the truth is you can, because we socialize, don't we? We talk to our friends, we talk to our families, and all of those little interactions are providing opportunities for people to share new ideas, to come in contact with new concepts, and social forces trickle down and have an effect that way.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
I think that's so important, Natasha. Thank you.
yes, because change happens when it's acknowledged and when it's shared with other people. Then they know there's a problem, then they can try to fix it. But if we stay quiet and keep our knowledge to ourselves, nothing will change, because it's only us. But if we share it, then there's more people who have the same thoughts as us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Natasha. I appreciate you sharing.
Yes.
We need more of that shared understanding. That's what brings about social change. We need to be able to identify a problem, and we need to be able to create a common understanding and a common goal, and work together. And again, it takes those conversations, not just big programs and big documentaries, but one-on-one discussions with people, right? You're all a part of the solution. Now, Tina, I see your hand up next. Would you like to chime in and share?
Okay. With me, I kind of knew quite a bit, because I do have a few friends that are Indigenous, and I also have a brother that's Indigenous. but he doesn't know his culture due to the fact that him and his father and my mother split up like when he was like 4 months old. So, but with my friends, I've learned that it's easier to talk to them now because I understand a little bit more than I did prior. So it's not as hard of a conversation anymore. I don't feel like I'm left out. When they start talking about certain things, I can understand it a little bit better.
And I think that helps us build stronger relationships. You mentioned these are friends of yours from before, but do you find you feel, you know, maybe stronger connected or more positively connected now that you have that deeper understanding, that shared understanding?
Like my friend, her Indigenous name is Bear.
Mm-hmm.
I now understand a little bit more about why she has that name and why it was given to her. She's also the friend that has the eagle feather and why she holds it so highly. So I understand a little bit more about the culture now. So
I love that. You know, and it just, again, it speaks to the fact that, again, like the turtle, we need to be patient. You know, it's not to say that we haven't had an appreciation for this culture before this program. It's not to say we haven't had friends before this program, but, you know, this program is designed to help us enhance those friendships, enhance those relationships. Let's do something more with them. And I'm so happy to hear that that's been such a positive thing for you, Tina, and for your friends too.
And I also feel they should be teaching more of this into the school system.
I agree with that as well. And I found it to be so inspirational that a number of schools are starting to incorporate more of these Indigenous programmings, safe spaces, and support agents into the school. But again, we're not necessarily seeing it in every school everywhere. There's variation out there, right? But we're starting to see growth and development. And I want to encourage you guys to advocate for more of that. Thank you so much for sharing, Tina. I really appreciate that. Amanda, I noticed your hand was up next. Would you like to share as well?
Yeah, I first wanted to say, like, thank you for Corey and, like, the afternoon class to actually making the program, because we couldn't have actually attended the classes without you guys. And then, like, I'll keep going to, like, the powwows that I used to go to and stuff, like, because I used to go to a lot of powwows, but, like, since a couple of years I've kind of laid back on it. It looks interesting now that I know more about the culture and stuff, because I do have a lot of friends that are Indigenous, because, like, I've traveled a lot with cadets and stuff. So
that's a wonderful point too. You know, as COVID restrictions change and we're able to travel more, there's so much that we can learn from traveling and you know, getting hands-on experience around new cultures and new communities. And powwows, what a wonderful example too. There are community opportunities to be involved with celebrations and cultural movements and dances. And again, we can learn more about it. And the more we understand about it, the more we can appreciate it when we go in there and we look to participate and we look to support it. Thank you so much for sharing. And we had a couple of wonderful comments come in here too. So Cassandra had mentioned that she's going to try to advocate more for the Indigenous people, especially when she notices that people are being closed-minded or negatively opinionated. Something that should always be done, but now I feel more aware. She also mentions that she's going to look actively for opportunities to learn and take away different pieces of information that can be given to her. I think that's a fantastic response. Something I've noticed and learned is that a lot of people can have very closed-minded opinions about things because they're not necessarily fully informed. For example, I've had people who make comments about the amount of money that the federal government provides Indigenous and First Nations schools when they provide so little to our public schools. But the reality is our provinces are the primary funders of our provincial schools, and the money that those schools get from the provinces is way more than the money that the federal government is giving those Indigenous schools. By comparison, our Indigenous schools do not receive as much funding. And just because it comes from different places, people end up getting a very skewed idea about what we are giving, and they tend to take a very negative and almost offended kind of outlook. This is just one example of a form of ignorance that I've seen. And there are other forms of it out there as well, but people may know a half-truth or a little bit of an idea, and they may not know all the rest of the story. And sometimes that leads them to be very negative or very closed-minded in the way they appear, and we can try to change that. We can be a positive social force to help them explore new things. We can use confrontation in a skilled way, right? Confrontation doesn't have to be telling people they're wrong and putting them down, but it can be presenting them with a new idea or a new opportunity to think of things differently. Nicole has a wonderful comment here. Her biggest takeaway is that learning never stops and that understanding others is a constant throughout life. Everybody is beautiful and different, and we need to give others a chance to be who they are and not be judgmental for them. I agree. It's a continuing journey for us, isn't it? It doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop today. And we can continue to develop that active appreciation for people. We don't want to judge. We have many things in common with others, and we also have many, many things that are different from other people as well. And we want to appreciate those differences and learn from them instead of allowing them to become barriers. Sabrina mentioned that she'll be actively keeping the conversation going instead of waiting for there to be another catastrophe to draw the issue. I think that's really, really big, because a lot of times things show up in our news, they get some attention, but then they disappear and we don't see things being resolved. If we really want to see reconciliation in Canada, we can't let the conversation die out. We can't wait for there to be problems to talk about it and have a response. We need to continue the dialogue. So making sure to keep learning and staying aware, Sabrina, I think that's important. I agree. Herminia also just added a comment that her takeaway is the grandfather teachings and how beautiful every representation of it is with the animals and how wise their beliefs are. She really wishes that the rest of the world would look at and follow these teachings. I agree. I think they're very beautiful, very inspirational. They are teachings that have no malice. They have no selfishness. They are holistic and mindful of others. They're a great way to live your life, not just in the interest of, other people's well-being, but also to get the most out of your relationships and the most appreciation out of your life. I love these teachings, largely because of how much they do mirror a lot of my own personal values. This program has mentioned to Cassandra that it has inspired her to really want to travel even more than she already wanted to. It makes her want to go to reservations and experience different places with different cultures so that she can learn more about them. I think that is a great thing. And again, I think inspirational is the word. You're right. So Jessica also has a lovely comment here. She mentioned that the program has allowed her to have a better understanding of this culture and allowed her to also share what she's learned here with some of her family and friends. I'm so proud to hear that. Again, the conversation doesn't stop here, and the fact that you're already taking it beyond our virtual classroom, that's beautiful. Some of which have slowly been starting to change the ways they look at life. So it sounds like those discussion and what you're sharing is, having a positive impact on people. It's giving them new perspectives and new lenses. I love that. It sounds like it made you want to, it made you want to be a part of the change and want to help them continue fighting for their rights, to keep the conversation going as long as you can, and that you've been taking the time to do your own research and read your own stories. That is such a huge thing too. There are so many unknown stories out there. There are so many things that have happened and been done over the years that people are just not aware of. Sometimes it just doesn't get the attention of the media. Sometimes it's not enough people or the right people to catch the attention of the media, but it doesn't mean the stories are not out there if you take the time to look at them. You can learn about Indigenous and First Nations communities from up north that were affected by radium and radiation and the uranium mines. You can read about different reservations and people that have been moved to very distanced places far away from industrialized area, making them marginalized and at risk for having access to things like water, electricity, or some of the basic fundamental things that we consider to be just day-to-day things. There are so many stories. The research is endless. And I feel that the more we do this reconciliation, the more they investigate these sites, the more we uncover, the more stories we're going to have to learn from. So I love that you and your family are getting the ingredients together to do a smudging in your home. That was just mentioned by Erminia. We talked about smudging a few weeks ago, and what a great way just to ground yourself and center yourself, to be reflective and mindful. I love that, you know, you didn't just take away ideas, you took away maybe some tools and things that you can actually do, some actions. That's great. So, and I'll be honest, I do want to go to a powwow too. I see a few people in the chat saying they want to go, and it sounds like fun, and I agree. I haven't had the pleasure of doing that. I've been able to attend some smudging ceremonies. I've been able to go to a ceremonial sweat and a feast and a couple of different things. But one thing I have not been able to do yet is attend a powwow. And I know that I really want to go to. They look like beautiful ceremonies and, again, wonderful opportunities to learn more about the culture and appreciate it and support it. So I encourage you guys, if you find opportunities to go to things like powwows, go and be supportive, be a part of it, learn. I love that. These have been some great comments, and just as they're wrapping up, I would like to say a huge shout out to the afternoon class for putting this program together. You may have noticed they are not with us today, and I'm facilitating solo because they are my senior class and they're actually now out on their placement. So I'm very proud of them. A huge round of applause for them. They really put a lot of work into this program, not just the program you've seen, but the whole program as a whole. And as I mentioned, they're all out on placement. They're starting that final leg of their education journeys before becoming professionals out there in the field, where they're also going to be looking to continue this conversation. Chatting with them at the end of last week, I was asked to pass along their thank yous. They were absolutely overwhelmed by the number of people who responded and have attended and that have continued to watch the videos when you've had the occasional missed week. You've shown a lot of dedication, and it's really, really inspired them and definitely helped them to feel like they've learned something and they're making a difference. So I was asked to pass along those thank yous, and I really want to just kind of echo their message. You've really been a part of the solution by attending and dedicating yourself to this program. It's helped to build up the students here in our class and really make a difference to those second-year students. It's also, I believe, made a difference in the social landscape of our college campuses. And knowing that we're walking away from this, continuing the conversation and continuing these practices, I know that that difference, that positive change, is going to seep into all of our different lives. It's going to go across our community. Each one of us can be a part of a huge change. And I can't say thank you enough for being a part of it. So it is 1:45 today, and we are here at the end of our program. If there are any final thoughts or any final comments, I'd like to encourage you to share. And then we're going to be wrapping up and saying our goodbyes. And I want to rephrase that. We're not saying our goodbyes. We're saying our until next times, right? Because the conversation is always going to keep going. I want to remind you all that my door is always open, my digital remote door. If you're ever looking to reach out, you can always send me a message, send me an email. If you ever find resources that you'd like to share, I want to encourage you to share them, not only with me, but with your classmates, with the people you see in the room, with your family, right? So Thank you all for your dedication, for your time, for those beautiful comments that are coming in from all of you. I really appreciate it. I'll be honest, little selfish moment. It's been very empowering for me too. It's been very inspiring and very reassuring to be a part of what I truly believe is a positive project that has an impact. And I know at COVID, we all really need something like that right now, right? We're all a little more isolated, and I think we all need to feel like we're still doing something meaningful and purposeful. And I hope all of you are feeling as good as about it as I am too. So thank you. All right, well, I'm not seeing any other hands, but I am seeing a lot of lovely comments. So again, thank you for attending. Thank you for your participation, your continuing of the conversation. I'm going to look forward to the next time I have the pleasure of talking and meeting with each and every one of you. And I'm wishing you continued personal and professional success. Much love, all the best, and thank you again. Bye, everybody.